And we have,
Let's wait for Gary.
oh yeah, we need our administrator.
Yeah,
Thank
this-
you so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I can ratchet this up one more.
Let me run over there and make sure.
Whoops.
Wrong one.
Yeah,
Yeah, you want to go back up again?
yeah,
Okay, get ready.
I did. Oh, wait, yeah, let's see. Oh, yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's easier on my knees when I don't have to bend them so much. Thank you so much. When our county administrator returns, we will, there we go. We are ready to rock and roll. So the next presentation is County Counsel. Stephen Madker is in the room with us. Mr. Madker, you're on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Parks. Good morning, members of the Budget Committee. I am Stephen Madcor. I am your County Counsel. The Office of County Counsel, the mission statement by way of our performance Clackamas is to provide comprehensive legal services easily accessible to Clackamas County and its special districts through its elected officials and departments so that they can effectively implement their policy objectives, achieve success for their operations, and minimize risk and adverse results. The office consists of 10 attorneys and 3 support staff, the majority of which are in this building as we speak in Suite 254. What have we been doing for the last year? We have been providing legal services seamlessly to the county and its departments and special districts, despite working remotely and on-site. Christina, can we have the next slide, please? Our accomplishments for 2020, in addition to dealing with all these emergencies, has been the standard provision of legal services, reviewing over 600 contracts, doing numerous labor grievances and arbitrations, receiving over 45 tort claim notices, actively litigating over 35 cases, seamlessly providing legal advice, regulatory advice, and transactional advice to all county departments. We transitioned the Parrot Creek property to a nonprofit. We also served as lead in the acceptance of donated property to county parks. We implemented an abandoned RV vehicle program, which has found its way into Clackamas County. We provided training and orientation to county departments and new staff. That is our regular order of service and business. In addition, we also drafted and shepherded through numerous emergency declarations. We had the COVID declaration on March 3rd of 2020. We since have done 8 different addendums. We have done over 15 additional emergency measures to that COVID emergency. We had a wildfire emergency. We implemented numerous emergency measures, including curfews to the wildfire emergency. We had the ice storm emergency, in which we had additional measures there as well. We interpreted, advised, and applied a number of relatively hastily devised federal statutes and funding mechanisms. We reviewed numerous IGAs with the state to make sure that the money followed through to the critical services and the public that needed those funds. In the midst of the wildfire emergency, we had our office do a 4-day Zoom arbitration on site with the sheriff's office, with remote arbitrator, with smoke in the background, and we provided that level of service without delay. And those were only a few of the tasks and accomplishments that the office performed over the course of the COVID pandemic, wildfire emergency, and the ice storms. Next slide, please, Christina. And so with our managing for results, we have 3 different lines of business. We have the county counsel, which is basically me advising the board, dealing with public records, dealing with training and those types of aspects, and working with county administration. We also have our legal support group, which is regulatory, it's WES, it's transactional, it's property transactions, it's BCS, it's doing some land use work, it's things along those lines. It's also the advisory component. A lot of our work is advisory, We give advice to HR, we give advice to county administration, we give advice to finance, we give advice to people, departments on a daily basis, over the phone, by way of email, by way of formal written memos. We also have our labor and litigation group, which is never ending. You are always going to get sued, and you're always going to have labor grievances. And so that takes up a large chunk of the office's practice and a large chunk of the office's time commitment and human resources commitment. We have implemented the various goals, and a lot of them are beyond our control to a certain extent. We can't dictate how many lawsuits we have. We can't dictate how many lawsuits we win. We can try to minimize risk. We can try to give advice as promptly and as in front of the issue as is possible to minimize risk and to avoid liability. If there is liability to the county, we will approach an early resolution. We are good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. We keep our board fully apprised of all litigation and all risk that's about or has been presented to the county itself. Our success on labor arbitrations, again, it's really beyond our control to a certain extent, but we do a very good job. We had great success last year. We had high metrics in that regard. We also had high metrics on turnaround time for contracts and contract review and being responsive to client needs. One thing that was in my office, and that's the bottom item there, that's in my department, is that we'll have individual meetings annually with all department heads to discuss the demand for legal services, measures of confidence, and convenient access to legal services. And that has been a time commitment, but it's been very valuable. So I have been meeting with not just departments, but branches of the county itself. And so I've been meeting with the directors and some of the deputy directors on how best to serve their needs, how best to be responsive, how best to anticipate what their desires and needs and requirements are, if they're anticipating any expansion in legal needs in the coming months. And it's been a very fruitful conversation. The number 8 was the number of departments and divisions we've met with, but it's actually since risen since the time we submitted this to 13. So we are well on our way towards achieving 100% compliance with that particular metric. Christina? And this is just a breakdown of where really the costs with the office go. We have a budget about $3.1 million. And again, the majority of it is going to be litigation. You are funding our litigators. We do it all in-house with the exception of cases in which we might have a conflict. We don't do workers' comp. We don't do bankruptcy. But the majority of other legal work we do. We do all of our labor grievances. We do all of our tort defense. And other entities will have insurance, outside insurance for those functions. We do not. We do it all in-house. It's no surprise that the majority of our litigation arises out of the sheriff's office, out of the jail, and out of patrol, because that's where there is most contact with the populace, and you're dealing with a vulnerable population, and the fact that it's the sheriff's office is no different with us than it is with any other public entity that has a law enforcement branch across the country. Next slide, please, Christina. Our budget is easy compared to the one you just saw. We don't have a housing authority. We don't have federal grants. We don't have state grants. We don't have restricted funds. We have, I've said it before, people, paper, and pencils. That is what we are. We are not fat. We are lean. We have a ask this year of $64,000, which is the capital outlay under expenditures. That is for a document and management software program, which is critical now in provision of legal services, particularly litigation. Organizing thousands of emails in an employment case is a huge undertaking in the absence of the technology. Right now, we're doing a little monthly rental of something called Disco, where we upload it to the cloud, organize it, bait stamp it, and then kind of jettison it. We're hoping to get something a bit more permanent in that regard. but technology has put aided legal services, but also put a greater burden on them because of the ask and the reach of discovery moving forward. But the majority of our revenue is from the general fund. We also bill out to some entities that actually bring in money. We bill to the risk fund. We bill to WES. WES has a full one FTE, and that's Amanda Keller. She's assigned to WES entirely. They pay her salary and benefits. We also charge to the risk fund on litigation. We charge $126 an hour. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You get a boutique law practice at Walmart prices. We recently went out for out-of-house counsel recently, and I've shared with the board this before. The range of dollars with private practice went from $350 to $850 an hour. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. So there's value with having in-house counsel in that regard. And again, our expenses are, we have allocated costs, and then we have we have staff. There is no increase other than the regular benefits increase and the regular salary increases and maybe some allocated cost increases. But again, the only ask was for the $65,000. And if you could go to the next page, please, Christina. And again, it's $3,129,050. It's a 3.2% increase, which is kind of consistent with, your CPI, kind of consistent with tax increases and things along those lines. Those are increases other than the $65,000. Those are increases essentially beyond our control. We don't have a lot of luxuries. We don't have a lot of travel. We don't have a lot of other, benefits and luxuries associated with the budget. In terms of, and you can go to the next slide if you would, and in terms of the department summary by fund, it's kind of a repeat of the prior one. The majority is litigation. We have, everyone in the office does a touch of litigation, be it employment or public records litigation or tort and property damage or condemnation or employment, but the majority of it is just housed with like 4 separate attorneys who do primarily litigation in addition to a few other county functions. And next one, for significant policy and or financial issues, I really listed none are anticipated, but I will say that we will need more FTEs moving forward. We have the office space for it downstairs because when we moved, we expected to have some growth, and we're prepared for that. The county will need additional legal support for HR. HR is only getting bigger. We're expanding our workforce. We have equal pay analysis issues. You're going to have more union issues. You're going to have more employment issues. The law on employment is changing on an annual basis, and it just is more demands upon employers, especially public employers. And so in terms of the advisory component and the benefits component and advising on the various leave laws, especially during this whole COVID thing, there's advice on a regular basis on all these leave laws, that there's an increased demand. Currently, we only really have one person solely devoted to that one lawyer, in addition to some overflow. In addition to that position, we will see a marked increase in the county's physical plant. We're looking at building a courthouse. We're looking at building other functions. We do need somebody who has a level of expertise in not just construction contracting, but in construction defect and construction advice and general contractor type of area of expertise. I know that Commissioner Savas expressed it when we were talking earlier about it. It's not so much a project manager, but it's somebody who does have more construction management advisory work. If you're building a courthouse and you're building other buildings, you would like to have somebody in-house to handle those areas. We have a good contracting and procurement group, but with respect to construction defect and to making sure that the project management is on track, we would probably need somebody along those lines as well. So that's really the only significant financial issue that we see moving forward. You might have noticed that some of our revenues were down over the course of this last year, and it was primarily because we had picked up staffing the EDI office, which previously wasn't done, so that's a new body of work that's required. So we have 2 attorneys assigned to handling that level of work in that particular department. And also the pandemic and all the emergencies have really consumed a variety of other really unbillable legal services that were devoted to addressing those concerns as opposed to devoting to billable and recoverable type of functions. Those other things are still being done, but more attention, extra attention was devoted to these other things. So I am here to answer any questions that the committee may have concerning my meager $3.125 million budget.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Mr. Madker. We have first up Chair Smith.
Thank you, Stephen Madcore, for your very concise presentation. You said you had 10 attorneys. Is that counting yourself?
Yes, Chair
Okay.
Smith, it is.
Okay. So you think maybe in the future we might need 2 additional, one for the employment labor context, and the other that this board has been talking about, project managers / legal help for our new construction that's happening in the county that will be ongoing for 10 years, I assume. Is that correct?
That's right, correct.
Okay. You know, yesterday we had a discussion with our district attorney, and they have gone fileless, AKA paperless, and they do a lot of stuff, email and so forth. And I asked him about his digital storage concerns, and he says they're trying to move to on-cloud storage for his particular situation. I'm not saying that's yours, but the addition of $64,000 in software as we are ramping up seems to be a warranted expense, and thank you for bringing that forward.
Thank you.
Then we have Commissioner Fisher, and then Christina has someone in queue.
Thank you, Chair Parks. So a few years ago, when we did the budget, one of the measures, and I believe it was in your budget, not human resources, but it was the percent of separations from the county resulting in some sort of litigation. And so I'm curious how we're doing now. I know then the numbers weren't very good 4 years ago. I'm just curious how often, what percent of separations from the county does your office get engaged in at any level, whether that's a appeal to BOLI or just any type of I don't want to just say litigation, because not everybody's going to file a lawsuit, but.
Yes, we did have a measure along those lines a few years ago. We removed it because it was really impossible to track, because our office is really only involved in those departures from county employment which have a, so to speak, red flag associated with them. People leave county employment all the time, and we don't track that. That would be an HR function. They have a whole form and process for that. But our office is involved in those in which we advise on a exit strategy of sorts. I would say the ones we advise on, we've had a very high success rate on ushering a non-performing employee out without a lot of risk and or liability. We do inevitably get employment lawsuits, and that's very little we can do about that. There are a lot of criteria, a lot of burdens imposed upon public employers that make it a little bit more likely to be sued than a private employer. But we don't actually track those numbers, Commissioner. It'd be good data to know, but it resides in various departments. The department itself, HR itself, and county council, so.
Well, let me just ask another question. I appreciate the measure on here about resolutions, percent of matters resolved through early resolution, and our target's 50%, our projected performance is 85%. I mean, that's just excellent results. So great job. One thing that I've wondering about, however, is that the different departments, how I understand it, is they get billed for using your services out of their budgets. Is that right?
Not all of them, no.
Okay.
County administration, for example, does not. The Board of County Commissioners does not. EDI does not. WES does. sheriff's office on certain things does. All risk cases does, yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like a big department like H3S, does it get billed?
On certain areas would, within H3S.
Yeah, so I'm just interested in looking at how we can minimize risk throughout and incentivizing getting early legal advice on any challenge that might come up, because I know even if it's a department, if it's a person looking for legal services, they might not get that early advice, or a department might not if they have to pay for it. So,
Yes, I've been an advocate of that for years. We do not want to be the last to know. We'd rather be the first to know. So you should feel free to call us without fear of incurring a cost. And that's when I have my meetings with department heads, that they should feel free to do that. And I think that that is a message that has been delivered and well-received and is known. I think we are not fully engaged, but we're very heavily engaged with the majority of departments. There are some that still might be a little bit reluctant to engage counsel.
yeah,
Not necessarily because of cost, though, either.
there's always that. So
Yeah.
thank you.
We have Christina, who has someone in queue, and then Commissioner Scholl.
Commissioner Savis?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that early on in Mr. Madcore's presentation, he mentioned his outreach to departments and how he can help, how he can be, how improve performance or services and so forth. So to Commissioner Fisher's point about being proactive in a sense, I think that I can say that, you know, Mr. Madcore and his office and team have always been available, made themselves available, and not just respond to issues, but try to get in front of them. So I just want to do a shout out to, you know, himself and his office and his good work. With that said, you know, I don't know if my question is for Gary, perhaps, but in recognition of the increased or the desire for some increased representation for the area of whether it's construction or HR type needs, is there, what opportunities do we have in the future to address that increase in capacity in legal counsel's office?
Well, that's a great question, Commissioner, and these are difficult choices. Every single department is either going to say to you today, or they're thinking it and won't tell you, is they need more resources. Every single department, and you have limited resources. So those are very difficult decisions that you ultimately will make on how to staff this organization with my recommendation. So I can't answer that for you today because every single department has needs that are unmet. And we can't be everything to everyone, in my opinion. So I will provide a recommendation to you in the coming year, and then you will get to make the decision on how to staff and support all the various needs we have throughout our organization.
Yeah, I say this because with fiscal thoughts in mind, that you know, that saying an ounce of prevention is worth, you know, a pound of whatever word you want to use there. But from a dollar standpoint, I think that the type of work we're talking about here saves the county money, and I see direct correlation, not unlike the auditor position that we'll talk about, you know, when the treasurer is here presenting. I think there are certain areas where it'd be very frugal to make the expenditure to add capacity, you know, in order to save the dollars. You know, I know that department is extremely busy, and there's more work in front of us. And they have been very responsive to my requests, but I also realize that there's limited capacity to meet some of those requests in the detail that's really needed. So I say that with fiscal responsibility in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, Commissioner Shaw.
Yes, ma'am. My question had to do with the law library, but I remember that's another briefing, so I'm good to go. Thank you.
So you're good? Okay, all right, thank you. I see no other cards nor lights, Mr. Radker, so we thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
presentation today. We realize the value that you provide to Clackamas County, and thank you for that.
My pleasure, thank you.